our latest episode of Bottom of the Barrel. How you doing, Jermaine?
I am excellent, Matt. How are you?
That's not very convincing.
I even thought to myself as I said it, that sounds kind of robotic.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, man, how we do on these things. We start slow, finish fast.
Yeah, just like your love life.
Asshole. I mean, could you please not be eating while we're doing? Show some respect to the bottom feeders.
Mute. Sorry, I was a second too late. These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh my god! People, please don't turn this off. I promise you, it's gonna be good. I hope it's gonna be good. If it stinks, you will never hear this.
So what do you want to talk about?
I'd like to revisit a topic from our earlier days that most people probably did not hear of.
Why wouldn't they have heard it?
Various reasons, you know, bad jokes, stage names, that kind of stuff. That just, yeah. Hopefully we can dig in the archives and pull it back up for our best of.
So basically, our best of will consist of
or
just everything.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, or I can label it the lost tapes. You know, something goofy like that. Like when musicians have throwaway stuff and they're like the lost files. They're like, were they lost or they weren't very good?
Yeah. So what is this topic we're gonna bring back up?
Comics that we would. I know initially it was comics that we wanted to see live, but I think that, you know, there are so many comics that have passed away that you know, you and I are rediscovering, or we had heard of them but we didn't really pay much attention at the time.
Yeah. And
now it's like, oh my goodness, I wish I could have seen this guy or lady. Because women are funny. Jerry Lewis, as we discussed in an earlier podcast.
Yeah, I just started watching Amy Schumer's show, which is cracking me up.
Yeah, I think Amy is solid. Have you listened to any of her stand-up yet?
Just what she does on her show.
Okay. Yeah, I would suggest pulling up. What was that?
Sorry, I got a text.
Okay. It's all.
Have to deal with work. This would be my only interruption.
No, it's cool, man. We can stop it if need be. But no, I would, you know, highly suggest listening to some of her stand up. It's excellent. I feel like you'd be a fan.
What's interesting is people say how not only, well, Jerry Lewis would say no woman's funny, but people say, can attractive women be funny? And I think Amy Schumer's attractive.
No, I think a lot of people think she's attractive. There's something about her.
That black outfit she wears.
Oh my goodness.
She's trying, and it's working. But she's got kind of a gift though going for her with her look, where she can look kind of goofy at times.
Right.
And it works in a skit, and then when she wants to, she can look really hot.
Yeah. Well, she's the one I told you that she had the story where the guy rolled up on her in a bar and was like, how'd this guy get here? And he points down and he's just got an erection. And she was impressed by that and ended up sleeping with the guy. and
that works?
Yeah, and she's like, I have to admit, it was pretty original. She's like, he got me. She's like, what can I say? Which I think is cool that she even admitted.
Yeah, because most women would be like,
horrified.
I would never. Even if they did it, they wouldn't admit it.
And she was like, I was impressed. And it's interesting because she talked about, I think she dated one of the professional wrestlers. And and I think this is like on the Howard Stern show. And he asked her, like, you know, he was like, how was that? And she was like, well, I'd never been in a position where I felt like someone tossed me around like a feather. She's like in a good way, but she was impressed. She was like, it was very athletic.
Wow.
I was like, oh, he must have been the man. She's like, he made me feel like I was light. I was like, alrighty then. But, if I'm not mistaken, she's currently dating Anthony Jeselnik.
Oh, okay.
Whose show is interesting, not as good as hers.
I need to look up his stuff, because I'm not placing him at the moment. I know the name.
He's the dude that Patrice called an open micer during that Charlie Sheen roast.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that he was beating down when he was like, I refuse to learn your last name. In my world, you're an open micer. But Justin Lake's another one of those guys. Like I know that we were talking about Tosh earlier, Daniel Tosh. That I think his jokes are really good. Like you're like, wow, that's a good joke. They're really, really dark. Like, oh yeah, like and it's like which I have no problem with. Excuse me, but not necessarily like. I don't find myself laughing hysterically when I hear it, but I'm like, oh, that's a good joke. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, there's definitely people like that where you're just, oh, that's really clever. And you never really laugh. You just have that thought.
I will say the first episode of his show, I would totally advise everyone. There's a skit, which I'm sure people... I didn't hear anyone going crazy about it, but he does stand up for cancer patients, and some of his jokes are like, I can't believe he said that.
Wow.
But I was like, that's an awesome joke, but I can't believe he said it to those people. And you're like, that's kind of horrific and funny at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And I know a lot of people would be like, no, I could never laugh at that because that would mean I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Laugh at anything that's funny.
Yeah. So, like, I would suggest, like, looking for that first episode or just looking for when he does stand up to the support group. And I think, like, one of his first jokes, and I know I'm going to butcher it, but he says, like, what's black and white and red all over? And he's like, your will. And he just like, dude. And then I started laughing, like... And I'm sure, like, again, I butchered that joke, but it went something to that nature, and I was like, I don't know. I found the whole thing interesting. Is there anyone else you were thinking about? I thought Amy was a good one.
I'm trying to think new people. Mark Maron's kind of hot right now, but I haven't been able to get into his show yet.
You know, I will say this. I think the show is solid. The issue I find myself having, because he's getting good people on the show, and the episodes are actually decent. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, oh, it's not bad. It just, once he goes on his rant about his issues, and then I'm just like, ugh. This is like, it kind of takes away from the episode, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He does it on his podcast where, he will give you his little take before and after a podcast. And that's like the worst part of the podcast every time for me.
Well, and it's what started to annoy, and I know this is sacrilege, but it's what started to annoy me with George Carlin, where he got real preachy.
Yeah, I actually saw, I guess, the interview he did with Chris Rock on the Chris Rock show, and he starts doing that. Sorry to me cut you off.
No, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, funny's funny, but there was times when he would just be preaching to his audience, and it just, to me, it would get annoying.
Right. No, you're not alone, because he does it in that interview, and I'm like, be funny. Which I know, like, it's not gonna happen all the time, but it just, I don't know, it went dark. And not, dark as in scary, as in, I'm getting more information. I'm getting the information I don't want to know. I don't know. But,
who else are you thinking of?
Well, we've been talking about, Jim Jeffries.
Yeah.
Who, I think is starting to make a little bit of noise. He just, finished, the first season of his show, Legit, which, I saw that critics, he was getting, a lot of critical acclaim. I think it's a good show. He was a guy I knew nothing about, and just kind of saw the show, and again, most of his humor is pretty dark, but freaking hysterical. And then it made me want to, check him out and listen to some of his stand up, which from the minute he walks on stage, I didn't think it was his latest stand up, which I don't have the name in front of me, but from the minute he walks on stage, I just think he killed the whole time. And even the fact that he talked about something that I never hear comedians talk about, where he talked about, they all talk about don't video me, but the fact that he's like, it's edited down to look superb. He's like, there's the jokes that you don't see that fall flat. And I was like, well, at least he admitted it. It's not like anyone would admit that, they had bad jokes in their stand-up, in their stand-up special.
Yeah.
And the fact that he made a joke about it, I don't know. I thought that was pretty clever.
Patton Oswalt admitted not that it was a big confession, but that his first stand-up special was like 2.5 hours, and he cut like an hour out of it, a little more than an hour out of it, for what you see. So, but I just respect anybody to be up there for 2.5 hours.
Oh my god, I still don't know how Chappelle and Dane Cook do those 6 and 7 hour shows, and I don't understand how anyone can stay. I guess I do, but I know I'd be like, I gotta go.
Yeah, Patton, he's been making a lot of noise lately, actually. Patton Oswalt.
Yeah.
And part of it's just being on Twitter, of all things. And he's written a few things he wrote this really long article recently about people that steal and that kind of thing that got a lot of attention, and he linked it on his Twitter, but it got picked up by a lot of websites, like a lot of legitimate, like big time, like I don't know, Newsweek or something, like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he's an interesting dude. I kind of had the feeling that he'd beat down King of Queens, because I just looked at him as somebody who thinks he's above that now.
Right.
But he totally doesn't.
Oh,
he's
really?
Like, he's like, that was the greatest experience ever, and I'm so thankful I had it, and that, so that made me like him.
Yeah, I wondered about that, because the more and more, it's just funny, like, you made I think a great comment about this one time, of how since, we've gotten so into comedy in, the last year and a half, that, how we're noticing so many comedians, like, on watching older sitcom reruns, like, how, like, I'm constantly texting you, like, dude, I saw Dom Herrera on King of Queens, and I think I was watching King of Queens the other day, and I was like, holy crap, there's this person, that person, this person. And it was just an episode of comedians just throughout the whole episode. So, just us getting into the aspect of that, we're constantly eyeing and seeing these people that we just kind of not blew off, but saw them as extras,
Yeah. And it's cool that Kevin James would try to get his friends into episodes, because he had a lot of pull, obviously. He was producing and stuff, that show.
Well, the whole, like, his friendship with Ray Romano is always interesting to me, because they talked about how, like, they both came out to Hollywood at the same time, and they were roommates during, like, one pilot season, because there's, like, I guess they said, they mentioned, like, there's, like, a Holiday Inn or a Days Inn in L.A., that if, you're there for pilot season and you got, like, whatever, like a SAG card or something like that, that, they'll let you stay there for, like, $600 for the month.
Yeah.
So, like, they're very accommodating to actors. It's something crazy like that. Not crazy, but, where they got this great deal. And that's what they all did. Like, they flocked to LA for pilot season. And, they thought it's funny because Ray talks about how he was always blown away by how much food Kevin James ate.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things too. I think like Ray got his show first.
Yeah, he did.
And Kevin had to, keep coming out. And then I guess eventually got on. And then you see, as if you watch those two shows, that they constantly make appearances on each other's show.
Yeah, it was kind of a crossover, it felt like.
Yeah, they've done several episodes where they've been.
Yeah.
And I know they did a movie together way back when. I think it was like straight to video.
Sorry, my brother-in-law he goes, only in a TV sitcom would a guy who looks like that have a wife as hot as that.
For real.
And I said, yeah, but you have to look at his real life wife because she's even hotter.
Yeah. Well, I think it's even one of the things that I like about that show is that they even make reference to it. Because, he was talking about his wife in one episode, and he goes, I think I could have gotten her doing a lot less. And his friend goes, no. You couldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are times where you look at those sitcoms and you're like, no freaking way.
But he got a model. Of course, he was a successful comedian.
And he had a hit TV show at the time.
Yeah. So I wonder if she was one of those comedian groupies.
Chuckle fuckers. Is there anyone else? Anyone you got? We got Amy Schumer and Jim Jeffries. We talked about Patton Oswalt.
I was thinking of that book. You need to read that book so we can talk about it.
I know. There's so many things I need to do.
Let me think here. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this list of the 50 or whatever. All these great comedians, supposedly. I don't know if I could sit through. Well, I know I could. But I've never thought overly highly of Gilbert Gottfried. He cracked me up. Like, when he and Norm, and I know we were both talking about it, when he and Norm got together to talk. I guess we played it. You played a clip of it the other day.
No, that was the Nick Swartzen.
Oh, that was the other one.
Yeah, we didn't play any Gilbert Gottfried because...
I think his voice has definitely helped his career because he gets a lot of voice work out of it.
Right.
Like he shows up in animated, like Disney movies and stuff. But in a way, I wonder if it hasn't hurt his career a little bit too, because he's just great at thinking of jokes. Yeah. I mean, no other way to put it. And I think people, you're like, oh, that's a great joke. But you're thinking of just how annoying his voice sounds, and then you realize, oh, he's funny underneath all that.
He's an interesting guy because I heard him he was actually on a radio station here, I guess, not here, but in the DC area, where I guess he was doing something maybe at a DC Improv, and he was probably on for the entirety of the show, and you could tell, like, there were moments where he was on, and he was just killing everybody. And then you got a glimpse into the regular Gilbert Gottfried that everyone else doesn't see. And a totally different person. You don't get the voice. And I was intrigued by him. I'm like, wow, he's actually pretty cool. And then, you could tell he could have those moments where he's like, okay, I'm getting too serious. Let me amp it back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that podcast with Norm, I was laughing hysterically.
That joke he did about
with Jerry Lewis.
that one was hilarious. And then the one where Michael Douglas is saying how he caught cancer.
Right.
And because he claims he caught it through performing oral sex.
Uh-huh.
And Gilbert says, well, I'd risk it if I got to perform oral sex on Catherine Zeta-Jones. And he says it a lot more colorfully than that.
Right.
And he goes on and makes example after example. And it was another example of one of those things where I should not be laughing this hard, but I can't stop. It was just hilarious.
No.
And,
I was right there with you, man.
And yeah, the Jerry Lewis telethon story he did was...
I won't do the joke, but I suggest you listen to it.
Just find it, because we won't do it credit.
Oh my god. There's no way I could do that one. It's so freaking funny. And it's funny because of him. 100%.
Another guy I just saw, and then I'll
go ahead.
Just real quick. And I have no opinion of this dude. I'll just say that. But I found him interesting because I saw an interview with him just like 2 days ago. Was Bobcat Goldthwait.
Right.
And he doesn't do the voice at all anymore. He does stand up now.
Right.
Still. I shouldn't say now, but still. But when he does his stand up, he doesn't go into that voice that he's famous for.
Yeah. He gets angry if you bring it up.
And it was just weird to see him on the screen talking like a normal person.
Right.
He's like, yeah, I don't do that. I haven't done that for like 9 years or something. And I wonder how many people go and see him do stand-up and think, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, they're expecting it. And I'm sure it gets kind of hostile because, there are always people that are going to want to push it.
Well, I can't blame him because I probably would have gotten tired of that too.
Yeah, well, that's the tough thing. Like, that's why I always think it's interesting when Dom Herrera is talking about it, because he did the early in his stand up, he did the whole thing where he did a lot of like an Italian, the Italian thing, and he talks about how the comedian said, don't get pigeonholed into this is all you do, kind of like Andrew Dice Clay. And maybe it was you or someone else was talking about it, how, like, when he first, it was Jerry Seinfeld, I guess, when he was talking about how, like, when he first started, like, he did a bunch of different things. And,
yeah, Jerry said that recently.
Yeah, and Dice was just one of the characters, like, one of many of the characters that he did, and then eventually he just turned into the character and wrote it out, and he was huge, but then it just became, okay, well, what else you got?
Yeah.
But, I think one that we constantly talk about, and, he's one of the comedians that's passed away that I think, we're both big fans of, was Mitch Hedberg.
Oh my gosh.
And I just wish, like you said, I know you're trying to write material that's as quick to the punchline like he did.
Yeah.
I just wish I could do stuff like that. And just to see, like, comedians like Dave Chappelle was a huge fan of Mitch Hedberg. Just tells you, how good he was.
And my style, like, I hesitate to even say I have a style. I'm so, like, such a newbie at this whole thing. But my style is not naturally to do jokes like he does. But that's why I'm so interested and why I'm so fascinated by him and impressed with him. It's just the thoughts he has. I mean, it's like, I think of something funny and then I write it down. But if the pen is too far away from where I'm sitting, I spend the rest of the time convincing myself it's not funny.
I saw, and I think I was telling you this, that I saw an interview with him where he was talking about how early in his stand-up, of course, everyone in that business wants to mentor you if they think you're good. And he was like, he took a comedy class, and one of the teachers was like, yeah, you should, like, wear a funny outfit. And he was like, why? They're like, because you'll get laughs just by your outfit alone. He's like, I want the laughs from my joke.
That's so stupid, and I think the Seinfeld episode kind of hit on that perfectly when he tried to bomb on purpose and he goes out wearing the suspenders.
Right. Yeah, he just said that he constantly got bad advice. He's like, he thought they were good teachers, they were good at what they did, but the advice that they gave him was horrible. And he's like, if you think you're funny, you should do, no matter what anyone says, you should do what you feel, because you're probably right, and it's just going to take some work. I don't know, I found that kind of interesting.
No, he was great. And I think it was you or our friend Jeff that brought up how much he loved his joke about
the tennis ball.
That one and Bigfoot.
That was one of my favorites.
Or somebody.
The giant blurry guy.
Yeah, he's just a giant blurry monster.
There's nothing wrong with the cameras or the video.
There's nothing wrong with the camera. It's just, which is more disturbing that there's a giant blurry monster out there and gotta feel sorry for him. And because I was trying to do a bit on Bigfoot, and then I saw that joke, and not, once again, not that I can even compare, and a premise is a premise. It's not necessarily a joke. But when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, my stuff's not that good.
Well, just the one about, someone walking up to it and said, this is a picture of me when I was younger. Every picture of you is when you're younger. And I was like, damn it, he's right. That's good. How does he do it?
Yeah, it's like you want to take a picture of yourself and then immediately show it to somebody and say, this is a picture of me when I was younger. It's a brilliant little thought.
Yeah.
It's like when what is the joke exactly? But I play tennis, but I can never beat the wall.
Yeah, no matter how much I practice, I'll never be able to be as good as the wall.
Yeah.
I think and we probably butchered that joke too.
Yeah, well, you less than me, but...
Well, he has another one that I like. It's, I'm just like, dang, that's a good joke. And I know a lot of people wouldn't like it, but when he's like, I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too. I don't know. I was laughing hysterically when I heard that. I'm like, that's a good joke. And then people were like, it's not that great. I'm like, no, that's funny.
It's just the cleverness. Because people can say, oh, anybody could have thought of that. Well, you didn't.
No. Well, give me what you got is what I always say. They're like, it's not that great. And I'm like, well, what do you got?
Yeah, what have you written?
They're like, well, you put me on the spot. Well, yeah. But I'm just saying, I'll give you a couple of days and you come back and give me something. That's yours.
Well, it's funny because when I'm writing out a bit about Bigfoot and then I hear him do that joke,
you ball it up.
I basically like balled it all up. Like,
I'm done.
Well, and I thought because Patton Oswalt in that thing he wrote mentioned how he did a bit where he just kind of mentions Hot Pockets. And when he gets off stage, and it was the first thing he had recorded for his, first album or whatever. And then when he gets off stage, this guy immediately tells him, oh, Jim Gaffigan's got a really famous bit on Hot Pockets. And Oswald's like, oh, I'm sure mine's different, blah, blah, blah. And he goes home and looks it up, and he's just like, damn it. Because there's no way, without even hearing Patton Oswalt's take on Hot Pockets, there's no way it's better than Jim Gaffigan.
Right.
And now Gaffigan's bit on that is just so famous,
right,
that you would look like a complete jerk even trying to say anything about Hot Pockets.
Yeah, I think people would groan if you tried to talk about Hot Pockets right now.
Yeah.
Because not because it's not good. It's because they'll be like, no, he's done that.
Yeah, it's like close the book on that subject.
Right. Is there any other ones that you got?
No. I'm actually just going through this list. I don't know when this was made, but it can't have been in the last year or two because this is like the 100 greatest comedians, and Louis C.K.'s 89 or something.
No way.
And if it came out today, he'd probably be like top 10.
Yeah, there's no way Louis 89.
Yeah.
Too strong.
Let's see. Of course, they had like Pryor 1, Carlin 2.
Right. Here's something that, just like you said, that would be everyone, I might lose legitimacy. Not that I have any. But, I think Richard Pryor is so hysterical just in regular conversation, just being himself, whatever.
Right.
But I went back and watched one of his stand-up, and I couldn't make it through it. I'll be honest with you.
Right.
And I know a lot of people will be like, "There's no way. Oh, how can you call yourself a comedy fan?" And I'm like, it's not that I'm not saying that I don't like Richard Pryor, because I do. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. I'm just saying that I have seen. I don't know. I hear other comedians say like Bill Burr, and there was someone else recently. Oh, Norm Macdonald. When everyone talks about how great Bill Hicks was, and they both said like they can't sit through Bill Hicks stand up, and they're like, I'll watch it and won't laugh one time. But it's industry standard that Bill Hicks is one of the was groundbreaking. And
I give him credit for even admitting that.
Yeah, which I think is interesting. I just think it's one of those things, and I think if I watched another one, I'd probably feel differently. I just know the one that I tried to watch, and I can't remember the name of it as of right now. That's like, it's Richard Pryor, and I like Richard Pryor. I just like, I laughed at one joke, and I was like, I even thought like, is something wrong with me? Because it's Richard Pryor.
Well, it's interesting because some people, it's like the material hasn't aged well or something. Because I did the same thing with Don Rickles.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'll see Don Rickles be a guest on, Letterman or whatever. Any show he's a guest on, I'll watch it.
Right.
And he cracks me up. And so I was somewhere and saw a Don Rickles CD for like 50 cents. I was like, oh, well, this will be, we're going on a trip. I'll put this in. This will pass the time and be hilarious. And I couldn't make it through it.
Dude, you know who else I felt the same way? Like, I'm a huge fan of him. Love, I think he had one of the greatest TV shows of all time. I think he was a hilarious guy. But I tried watching one of his stand-ups, and it was the same thing. I was like, dude, I'm not laughing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Red Fox.
Yeah, I can see that.
I love Red Fox, and I was just like, ugh, this is painful.
I I don't know if it's the style or what it is, or we just have bad taste.
I mean, I'll accept it, but I'm just being honest. We're both being honest, but I think it's just, it's standard if you were to say Richard Pryor and everybody's like, he's hilarious. I'm like, well, give me a bit,
Yeah. And some people could, and a lot of people couldn't.
Right, and and I wouldn't be mad either way. But I'm just saying, like, I'm saying as someone who is trying to go back and rediscover people, and it was just once, and I need to watch more because I was so young at the time, and it was more. I knew Richard Pryor more from the movies and all the other stuff, more so than stand-up, because I couldn't watch his stand-up. I mean, I was lucky if I got to see the movies.
Yeah.
If I'm watching the movies, it's probably because my dad was letting me watch them, and it wasn't, my mom would come in and my dad would be like, what are you doing in here?
I told you, get out.
The same thing. But
see, some people I've gone back and looked at, and I still crack up. I mean, his old stuff still cracks me up.
Right.
But,
I think one person that, annoys the hell out of me now is Eddie Murphy. But I think Delirious is still one of the funniest stand-ups I've ever seen.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say that that's totally ripped off from Richard Pryor. And, I mean, it may have been. I don't know. But that particular stand-up, I think, is amazing. But I hear so many people try to argue with me and tell me that Raw was better. I'm like, I saw Raw. It was awful.
Yeah.
Raw to me was so unfunny. And I'm like, there's no way you can look at Delirious and look at Raw and tell me. I mean, there's such a difference between his style in both of the stand-up. And I think in Delirious, he was so on point because that was, to me, at the height of his game.
Yeah.
And Raw was like right at the beginning of the end to me.
Raw's the one where he wears that crazy suit, right?
Well, he wears a crazy suit in both. Raw, he wears the purple suit.
Purple. Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, in Delirious, he has the red leather one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching Raw thinking, oh, this is going to be genius, then being really disappointed in it.
Yeah, like my cousin and I, which is, to me a funny story in its own right, we got Delirious and Raw from some friends, and we were teenagers at the time. We were pretty young, and we were at my cousin's house, and we weren't supposed to be watching that kind of stuff, but we were in the other end of the house, so we thought we were good, and so we watched Delirious first, and we're like laughing so hard at some of the jokes, and I don't know if you remember the joke about his fat aunt and falling down the steps, and they were laughing at her.
Yeah.
And my cousin and I were laughing so hard that we're on the floor in tears. And we didn't realize we were laughing so loud that my aunt came out to that end of the house. And as we looked up, we were like, oh no. And she just looks at the TV and goes, looks at us and goes, you two know you're not supposed to be watching this. And then she walks out of the room. And we're like, do we keep going?
Does that mean you can still watch it?
She didn't take the tapes. I'm a little nervous. But yeah, we like sit there and watch both back to back. And I still remember us, laughing the whole way through Delirious. And we were mildly laughing through Raw.
Yeah, and probably those laughs were based off of Delirious.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely different. I was disappointed. I was disappointed in the Kings of Comedy.
Yeah, I've only seen a little bit. The only guy I think that I would probably legitimately like out of those guys is Bernie Mac.
Bernie Mac was the funniest.
Yeah.
His jokes were on point. But as a whole, I'd heard, again, another one where people were like, you gotta see this, you gotta see this. And I was like, is this it? We're getting a little literal with that king stuff, aren't we?
Yeah. Didn't Spike Lee direct that?
Yup.
Yeah, it's not in his nature to go over the top.
And it's funny that, like, how many plays off that title since then, where there was the Queens of Comedy, the Latin Kings of Comedy. There's one with it was like with Asian comedians, and I can't remember how they used the title. And I'm like, really? Come on.
How difficult was it to direct that? Like, I don't know.
You got me on that one.
Spike Lee annoys me. That's my commentary. really.
No,
But
Joe Rogan has said it. Norm said it. Bill Burr has said it. They're like, they all said, they respected and they thought his jokes were really well written. They just didn't find it funny.
Yeah, and I've listened to him a decent amount, and I've never really laughed. I actually find it painful a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, and for the fact that that's who Dennis Leary ripped off,
right,
and it's so blatant. Like, how Leary is even respected at all boggles my mind.
Yeah.
But Norm's latest show, he played a clip of Bill Hicks and said, "This is, how I should be doing comedy from now on. Be important.
Right. Have a point of view."
Have a point of view, and Bill Hicks famously pretends like he gets shot at the end of his routine. He's like, "Yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to get murdered." And he plays a clip of Janine Garofalo making some weird statement, because Janine used to be really funny, and now a lot of times
super political.
Yeah, and it's like, oh well, if you look at the existential theory of blah blah blah, and like everybody knows about the toast. It's like even Dennis Miller's like, that's over my head. and all he did was play a clip of her and be like, yeah, see, I need to be doing material like this. And it was a total slam on her without really being a slam on her.
No, Jim Norton did something. He said something about her stand-up. But it was something to that nature. He's like, listening to her stand up makes me want to take a gun and stick it in my mouth. Which I think is funny because a lot of people were big fans of hers. And she's kind of, like you said with Carlin, it's the same thing with Carlin.
Yeah. Well, her head's gotten way too far up her own ass is the only way I can think to say it.
Yeah.
She thinks she's really important. She got on Air America, which was like the left version of talk radio. And she tried to do a leftist version of like Rush Limbaugh, and based on what? She's a comedian. I guess that's all it takes, to know about politics. But that totally bombed. But she thinks she's some intellectual. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't. But at the end of the day, I want my comedians to be funny.
Right. That's all that matters.
Yeah. And she used to be hilarious.
Oh,
I loved her.
She has one of her, and again, I wish I'm really bad with names of stand-up, the specials, but she has one that I was like, wow, I was like, I thought was really good. But now, like you said, when I hear her speak, I'm like, no, what happened to you?
I always wonder what Ben Stiller thinks of his old crew, namely her and Andy Dick.
Oh my god.
Because, they were all buddies and on his show.
Right.
And they were the three main guys, and Odenkirk was one of them, and Colin Quinn showed up in a couple episodes, but it was Garofalo, Dick, and Stiller were the main three, with I guess Odenkirk was the fourth. But I've always wondered if Stiller is like embarrassed, kind of.
Probably.
Especially by Andy Dick.
Oh,
I've never heard him talk about Andy Dick in years.
No.
Maybe I've just missed it, but
you wonder what that relationship is like.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, I assume Stiller seems like a cool guy. He's probably as supportive as he can be, and just like, could you start being good again, or
Well, it's interesting that when you said Colin Quinn, it made me think of Jerry Seinfeld's interview with Howard Stern when I guess when for his show. What's the show? Is comedians in cars getting coffee? Is that?
Yeah. Exactly.
I see. Again, I'm bad with names, but
but you got it exactly right.
When and I found it really interesting because when he said it, I had that thought at one point. Not that it really matters, but eventually I felt like people were gonna say it because that's the thing that they would always say about Seinfeld, the show. But I guess when he did the episode with Colin Quinn mentioned you might want to get some black comedians, you might want to get some women. Because there's people are gonna start talking, and Jerry's like, "What do you mean?" And he gets upset, and it shouldn't matter, which is his whole thing. Why does it matter? And I totally agree with him, but I understand why Colin Quinn said it, and it didn't. It was one of those things where it's like, I like what you're doing. Everyone likes what you're doing, but they're gonna miss the point if you don't mix it up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I really found that interesting when he said it. And even though, if you think about it, even in that episode, he does have a black comedian with Colin Quinn. He has is Mario Jordan?
Sounds right.
They were in the episode together, but it was I don't know. I just found it interesting that he said it because I was like, that's the first thing people are going to jump to with Jerry Seinfeld because that's what they said about the show.
Yeah, which wasn't really fair.
No, I mean they did have characters, they just didn't have main characters.
Yeah,
and that's why I love Larry David because he addresses it on Curb Your Enthusiasm in an episode. But it was interesting to me because the fact that he picked up on it right away and kind of told him, and he was like, you're being silly, and then it came back, and he was like, holy crap.
Yeah. Colin Quinn, go ahead.
No, and it's one of those things, like, the thing that I'm stressing is, like, I agree with Jerry, it shouldn't matter. It was just interesting that he called it.
Yeah.
And he knew, because that's the way our society is right now. You gotta have it as equal as possible, because we've seen with TV shows and what have you, if you do not have it, and I'm pretty sure, like, people will expect him to have a gay comedian as well. Because they're like, well, you don't have a gay comedian.
And even if it's not realistic, because frankly, Seinfeld was probably pretty realistic because he had a few friends on that show and they happened to be white. Like, most people's friends, not all, but most people's friends are their own race.
Well, I think one of the things, and again, it's the thing about it is people are taking it too seriously. It's a TV show. It's a comedy. Right. Don't read too much into it. But of course, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
One of the things is that just being in New York, where it's a city that's so diverse, is probably the best way of saying it. And it seemed like in a lot of the areas it lacked diversity, because you would just think in certain areas there would be more, say, Jamaican people, more Russians,
Yeah.
I would assume from what, I gather about New York, but I know nothing of New York. But again, I think people are reading too much into stuff instead of just letting it be what it is.
Yeah, whereas now we have to have a token character.
Exactly.
And that's why we throw awards at Modern Family.
Because it covers all of its bases.
Yeah.
It has
minorities. It's the most PC show around.
It has gay characters, and everyone loves it. And it has strong women leads. And I'm not saying I'm not against any of those things. I'm just saying
it's just playing the game.
It's is it great because it does all of those things, or is it great because it's funny? It's a funny show, but people go over the top. We've talked about this before, but people go over the top because they hit all of that criteria. But I just think, with the whole Seinfeld thing, I just think people are reading too much into a sitcom. It's a sitcom.
Yeah. I think of Seinfeld's friendship with Colin Quinn, and as well as Louis C.K., unless it's changed, he only follows one person on Twitter, and it's Colin Quinn. It just makes me want to go back and watch Colin Quinn stand up. Because apparently these comedians I really like him.
I will tell you this. I had to go back because I had heard listening to some of the old Opie and Anthony show that they would always, like, Jim Norton would always mention Colin Quinn in the show Tough Crowd that was on Comedy Central. And I remember when it was on. I never watched it because, like, I never really cared much for Colin Quinn.
Yeah, I was never a huge fan. I didn't dislike him, but...
Yeah, and I went back and watched, like, a bunch of episodes of that show, and I was like, man, this show is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And, because I heard people, like, referencing, like, oh, I hate that it got canceled. And it's a really good show. So it's one, if you're interested in Colin Quinn, I would go back and look up Tough Crowd and just look at episodes. Because, it's basically 4 comedians. They, talk about what's going on in the world today. And then, put a little comedic spin on it. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, I need to, because, man, everybody... I guess you call him a comedian's comedian. He's just respected by other comedians so much.
Right. Dom said he always thinks Colin is funny when he's bombing. He's like, there's something about watching him bomb that he thinks is hysterical because he's just relentless. Like, he won't just give up. Dying on me, man.
Nah, sorry. Got another work text. I had to respond.
Okay. I just didn't know if I needed to stop for a second.
No, you're good. Was there anybody else that you were wanting to talk about?
I'm sure, but I figured we could wrap this thing up. You know, we can call this part one.
Sounds good.
Of us talking about comics, because we're definitely going to talk about more, and we'll definitely revisit it, unless you had something you wanted to say.
No, I'm good. I think we've given them enough entertainment for one night.
That's what we do, man.
Gotta have them wanting more.
Oh, that's right. Well, I guess we'll call this one a night. Take it easy, bottom feeders.
See ya.
Word.